these are a couple videos from the BBC with a guest, Hussam Zumlot, who is the Palestinian ambassador to the UK. And one of these videos already went kind of semi-viral. It really made the rounds when he was asked to condemn the surprise Israel terror attack. And he gave an answer that we're going to play here. Then we're going to play another clip. So there's one of these that kind of went viral. The other one hasn't. But let's take a look at both of these in order, and we will give our commentary. So here's Hussam Zumlot on the BBC.
You just condemned Israel for killing civilians, and you won't condemn Hamas for killing civilians.
How many times you have interviewed Israeli officials, Louise? Hundreds of times. Hundreds of times. How many times Israel have committed war crimes right live on your own cameras? Do you start by asking them to condemn themselves? Have you? You don't. You don't. No, I'll answer that question. You don't. You know why I refuse to answer this question? Because I refuse the premise of it. Because at the very heart of it is misrepresentation of the whole thing. Because it's the Palestinians that are always expected to condemn themselves. I mean, come on, this is a political conflict. We have been denied our rights for a long time. So this is the wrong starting point. The right starting point is to focus on the root causes, is to try and get out of this extreme dark tunnel, as opposed to this business by BBC and the mainstream media for 75 years. You bring us here whenever there are Israelis who are killed. Did you bring me here when many Palestinians in the West Bank, more than 200 over the last few months? Do you invite me when there is such Israeli provocations in Jerusalem and elsewhere? Because what Israelis have seen, which we started...
Okay, I just want to stop there because, I mean, he's obviously making a ton of sense. I almost wish he stopped there and let the guy answer. When he said, did you invite me here when Israelis killed my people? Did you invite me here to talk about that, to talk about my legitimate grievances against the Israeli state? Did you bring me on to condemn Israel for doing that? I would love to see what that guy said. Because it's a pattern on these interviews.
He would RFK that shit.
Well, he would. Well, he would. But I would let him do that because it's a pattern on these interviews. Now, when you watch these interviews, when people start talking about the offenses that Israel has committed against Gaza and the West Bank, oftentimes the interviewer will simply just try and steamroll them or move it along. Yes, we understand that, but, right? I would love for him to just pause there. Hey, why do you only bring me on when it's time for me to condemn my people? Why don't you bring me on to talk about the issues facing my people, such as systemic oppression, and in this case, slaughter of my people at the hands of the Israeli state?
Well, this is something I've been bringing up with people who want to put the emphasis onto the Israeli side of this and people who have been killed in this, what I would call a prison break. That's terrible. I mourn for any loss of life. But let me ask you something. Why haven't I ever heard you bring this up in regards to the Palestinians? Because this kind of shit happens to them all the time. I've never heard you mention that.
Exactly.
Like if you were talking about that all this time and then you said, then you'd have credibility. But clearly, and this is what nobody wants to own, it's fucking racist, man. It's what Noam Chomsky calls worthy victims, right? In the end, so many people, without wanting to acknowledge it or think about it, have internalized the idea of Israeli victims as more worthy of sympathy than Palestinian victims. What other explanation is there for the fact that you didn't care about this? And somebody I was debating this with actually said to me, well, no, I don't think that's it, because this was such a big event that if it happened to Palestinians, that would get coverage. I said, well, now you just demonstrated your ignorance, because this does happen to Palestinians all the fucking time.
Yeah, check the numbers. 5,500 dead.
That's exactly what I said. More. I said, look at it. So this happens to them constantly, but they are not worthy victims. Israeli lives are given higher value than their lives. Clearly.
Right. It's very easy for me to condemn violence against civilians, against women, against children. That's not hard for me to do. I can do that very easily. What is hard for me to do is accept the framing that we are supposed to flood the airwaves with sympathy for Israeli victims while at the same time ignoring the Palestinian victims, not just of the Israeli response, but over the past several decades. Like, the ignoring of that perverts the premise of the question. And that's what this guy said. He says, I'm not answering that because I reject the premise of the question. That you only bring me on here when it's time for me to condemn my own people. And if you want me to condemn Hamas, you want me to condemn the killing of civilians, he even says, I can do that very easily, but where is the concern for the Palestinian people? That's absent. And that is evil. And that is racist. Absolutely. This is the language we have to start using because, look, thankfully, a lot of the woke liberals who have been taught for the past few decades or not for the few decades, but the past decade, they've been taught to decolonize their minds. A lot of them, the cognitive dissonance between being asked to decolonize your mind and being asked to support a colonizing power, thankfully, that is too much for even a lot of the shit libs.
Yes.
But for the people who are
that's been remarkable.
Yes.
But I will recommend the comedian Ryan Long just dropped a video of an actor trying to figure out who to support publicly, Palestine or Israel, because the signaling isn't clear. And as Long often does, he hit it right on the head. I don't think I've ever seen the woke left as confused about what position they're supposed to have as they are around this.
Well, that's why the best line of attack on this issue, when we're talking about this issue and you're trying to communicate to mainstream liberals what we feel on this, the key thing is to hammer on how racist all this coverage is, because they don't like Democrats don't like being called racist. They get very offended by that. But you have to explain that you are supporting racism by refusing to give airtime and to, at the very least, pay witness to the plight of the Palestinian people. That's racist. That's racist. You're not a racist, are you? You don't like being called that, do you? Okay. So if you don't like being called that, then don't be one.
And the inherent racism, I mean, the few Zionists I'm seeing who are willing to full-throatedly go back to the old playbook, the Israelis are victims. They're highly moral. They don't want to hurt anybody. They're being placed in this position by being attacked. What else are they supposed to do? All shit I've heard my entire life from people like that, but it's wearing thin now, as you point out. Their argument is inherently racist, and it really falls back on, look at what these people do. Look at what they're like, right? They're animals, which we literally have people on video from when I covered the rally saying that. So I saw somebody claiming Israel is trying to evacuate the people and Hamas is telling them to stay. They don't care about the Palestinian civilians. We do. I mean, it's just amazing. And the underlying theme there, which, usually they're not going to say the soft part out loud, is that they're ignorant, backward, violent people. And Israel's been put in an impossible situation where they have to try to manage people who are essentially savages.
Yeah. Though I was reading a Washington Post article this morning. I'm pretty sure this is where I saw that. Like I said, I've been reading so much, I might be mixing up the sources, so forgive me if that's the case. But they were talking about the estimated death toll in Gaza due to the Israeli retaliation is 1,500, and they estimate 500 of those are children. So you're going to tell me that Israel is being careful not to harm civilians when a third of the victims of their retaliation are children? Right. Children?
Well, the entire tactic is a war crime. I mean, you're not allowed to lay siege to a civilian population. Right. And they actually issued the statement, they're going to keep the fuel and the water and the electricity cut off until they get back the hostages. And said, don't tell us about the morality of our actions.
Right. Yep. All right, let's let this finish.
By saying tragic, the last 48 hours, the Palestinians see every day for the last 50 years. the last 48 hours. The
Sorry,
Palestinians.
I just want to back this up for a second, just to get the context back.
Do you invite me when there is such Israeli provocations in Jerusalem and elsewhere? Because what Israelis have seen, which we started by saying tragic, the last 48 hours, the Palestinians see every day for the last 50 years. You know the situation in Gaza, you've just described it. This is the biggest open-air presence. Those people, 2 million, have been taken hostage by Israel for the last 16 years. So I'm saying this just to say, Louise, perhaps this is about time we abandon this rhetoric, very dangerous, this framework, and we start giving people the real ugly truth sometimes.
Indeed. Now, that was on October 9th. So that was a few days ago by now. And that one really made the rounds online. There's another clip that Zumlaut posted to his Twitter from another BBC show, which I assume was taped on the 11th, because that's when he posted it. I assume he would have posted it the same night or maybe the night after. But here is him talking about his personal loss as a result of the Israeli retaliation. He has now lost
with incredible
members.
Poise, by the way.
Incredible poise, absolutely. So let's hear this now.
Dead in there's more than 800 dead in Gaza, including members of your own extended family. What do you know what happened to them?
They were just sitting at their home and they were simply bombarded. Their entire building was brought down. My cousin, Aya, her 2 children, her husband, her mother-in-law, and 2 other relatives died immediately, were killed instantly. And 2 of her youngest children, a twin, 2 years old, are now in intensive care. This is truly heartbreaking. And the issue here, Kirsty, is that they have no bunkers, they have no Iron Dome, they have nowhere to go. They are simply sitting ducks for the Israeli war machine.
I'm sorry for your own personal loss. I mean,
I'm sorry for your own personal loss, as if they died of food poisoning. They were murdered by the Israeli state. I'm sorry for your own personal loss. And then watch how quickly she pivots.
To go, they are simply sitting ducks for the Israeli war machine.
I'm sorry for your own personal loss. I mean, can I just be clear, though? You cannot condone the killing of civilians in Israel, can you? No.
It's unbelievable. Unbelievable. This is why we say, I mean, not only is it just on its face racist, but this is why I said in the story we did about this the other day, this is what it must be like. Like I said, I can only guess, all right? Pasty white boy that I am. I can only guess this is what it's like when black people explain what it's like to fear the police, right? Like when you're a black person and you're trying to explain to a white person what it's like to fear the cops, and they say, but you condemn the more radical elements of the BLM protesters, right? You don't think they should be out there destroying property, right? I know, you fear the cops, right? Got it. Now now I want you to condemn your people for going too far. Like that's what it must feel like. Like I said, I can only guess, right? But that's what it must feel like. The guy fucking literally said, my family was just killed. Right. Yeah, sorry for your own personal loss. Like I said, as if they died of fucking cancer. Yeah, sorry for your loss. Now, back to what we were talking about. You condemn the death of Israeli civilians. Like you don't give that statement any oxygen, any space to actually talk about what the fuck he just said. You just quickly dismiss it. Sorry for your loss and move on. Well, I mean, you're dealing with a callousness here that is just, it's unthinkable. And it's probably unthinkable to us because we're a couple of white guys sitting here. This is why I say, and the people who know this show know we do not reduce matters to race very often. But this is a situation where that's what jumps out at me. That's what jumps out at me. How impossible it is to communicate basic ideas about the basic humanity of people. It's impossible to communicate that to these people because they are either racist themselves or they are just so embedded within a racist system that they don't realize how they're coming across.
Well, that's it. And that's why very often on the show, we've been critical of people like Kendi or Robin DeAngelo. And I've always tried to make it clear when we talk about that. It's not that I don't think there's anything to the core concepts that they're exploiting. My issue is that they're exploiting them. They're not communicating them. It's not that I don't think there's systemic racism. Clearly, look at this woman. She's like a fucking character out of the Hunger Games here.
Right.
Well, you do agree that District 13 was wrong to rebel, don't you? I mean, of course. I mean, look at this. Would they ever, as he pointed out, would they ever sit there and grill an Israeli official this way? Well, you do condemn the killing of Palestinian civilians. They would. I have never in my life seen them ask a question like that of any Israeli official. It's all on that side. You know, nobody is going to condone that, but it's a very one-sided framing of it, and it is based on Chomsky's worthy and unworthy victims. That's what this is all about. We're all supposed to be extremely exercised only about the Israeli victims of the conflict, basically exclusively, whereas the Palestinians, if they're mentioned at all, it's as an abstraction.
Exactly. And now watch his answer. Watch how poised he stays.
I'm sorry for your own personal loss. I mean, can I just be clear, though? You cannot condone the killing of civilians in Israel, can you? Nor the kidnapped families.
No, we don't condone. And we are very clear, Kirsty. We reject any targeting or harming of civilians from all sides.
Okay, so are you fucking happy? Like, what do you want? Like, they want extended monologues about regret for the Israeli victims. They don't, but so is that the only thing that can make you happy? Is just monologuing your grief for the Israeli victims and just completely ignoring the Palestinian victims? Is that the only thing to make you happy? Apparently.
Well, yeah.
Apparently.
Well,
the guy gave you what you wanted right there. So sure. Right. So like.
Right. Well, that's
what
the
do you
script. That's been the script for decades.
Exactly. So there you have it.
Look, if there's just not to end on such a sad and negative note, I gotta say, in my lifetime, I have never seen the public reject that narrative as much as they're rejecting it right now. I've never seen it. Like, from what I'm seeing, the vast majority of sympathy is with the Palestinians.
From what you're seeing, yeah, I mean, you know, I don't know how reflective that is, but that's a good sign. You know, that's a good sign, at least.
I mean, if you look at the chatter, as we point out, because yes, they spent 10 years telling people to decolonize their mind without thinking through what the implications of that would be in a situation like this.
Right. Exactly.
Please clap.